You don't have this image on your PowerPoint, but I'm starting on this image because we just read those documents. And we know, what are the two questions we're facing with the Philippines? Annex or what? So with your partner, there's 4 different people up here. I want you to dissect who are these people, and then I want you to tell me what is probably their position on the Philippines. Okay? So figure out who the people are. Okay, let's look at the 4 different people. Who is this person right here on the bottom? Okay, and what are they doing? He's being stomped on. Okay, he has a foot on him, right? He can control him. Do you think that Filipino person is begging? They could be begging for their freedom, right? What do you think his stance is? Free or annex? Free. Okay, who's this guy right here? McKinley. I told you the caterpillar eyebrows will always tell us McKinley. What do we know he does with it? Annex. Okay, who are these guys? Who's this guy? This is Napoleon and this is Caesar. And what do we know about them from world history? Huh? They took over everything. And is this weighing on his conscience, McKinley, taking over everything? Yes, and does he? He takes it over. Okay, so do y'all get, I'm glad we had a little bit of world history last year. It really doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, so this is Emilio Aguinaldo, we saw in the last one. And he said in his reading in the annexation or freedom, right, what did he say? Did he want to be annexed or did they want to be set free? And he told McKinley, if you try to take us over, there will be what? War. So do you see his troops in his little tent? What is Uncle Sam throwing at him? He's throwing a soldier at him. And do y'all see this little Filipino people? They're like, yes, we want you, Uncle Sam. Really, do you think all Filipino people wanted the U.S. there? No. Okay, but this is a political cartoon portraying that. So Taft will eventually, after we decide to annex, will go in and be the administrator of this area. Do you see when they take pictures, how do we have the Filipino people looking? Native, right? Aguinaldo, when we saw him in the picture, he was suit and shirt, right? But again, this is that whole thing we talked about with the ethnological villages. They wanted them to be depicted in a certain way. Because of the Spanish-American War, America will become a dominant force in the Western Hemisphere. We signed that treaty, which gives us Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. We get the Anti-Imperialist League, which we talked about. And we said Cuba wasn't really independent. No, and this is going to lead to resentment that's going to cause issues when they're going to go to what new form of government. Okay, so this is where your PowerPoint starts off for those of you who wanted a PowerPoint. Our now issue is we got 3 colonial powers from the Spanish-American War, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. We already decided, what are we going to do with the Philippines? We're going to annex them. We paid $20 million, right? Why are we going to set it free when we paid that much? So now the issue resides with Puerto Rico. Because y'all remember from the Northwest Ordinance, Congress has authority over territories. And once territories get how many people? 60,000. They could become a what? And so this whole thing, y'all know people from Puerto Rico are currently citizens of the United States. But we're going to talk about how did it get there. Because the first act, the Joneses Act, really looked, the Foraker Act really looked at them as an unincorporated territory. And what that means is that they're not citizens of the United States, they're citizens of Puerto Rico. And many of the Puerto Ricans are like, well, we're a territory of the United States. When the U.S. moved west, all of those people still have their rights. And so we're going to see that the Puerto Ricans are going to get upset because they have to pay tariffs. is going to lead to the next place, which you should have seen on your study guide, the insular cases, where a lot of Puerto Ricans are saying, okay, we're part of the U.S., we should have constitutional rights. And the Supreme Court will say, no, constitutional rights don't automatically go to territories beyond the continental United States. Congress can decide who gets those rights. And Congress can lay down those import duties. Is this helping the Puerto Ricans anyway? Eventually, they're going to threaten rebellion. And this will lead to the Jones Act, which you had on your study guide, asking when did the Puerto Ricans become U.S. citizens? 1917. Because the Jones Act will give them full territorial status. That means they're now citizens. It removes those tariffs. They get to elect their own legislator and have their own government there, but then they also get to send someone to Washington, D.C. for vote for them. And so this is the current state of Puerto Rico, that those people in Puerto Rico are American citizens. They could vote in their local elections, but is it a full state? No, they could apply for statehood, right? And then they'll be the 51st state. It may happen in y'all's lifetime. I don't know.
We have to read all the flags.
So Panama, if you had me in world history last year, I talked about Panama. For those of you who did not have me, I'm going to talk about it again because you didn't get this last year. You probably got it with Miss Ramirez, but she probably didn't show you the video I showed my kids of the time lapse of the cruise. No. Okay, I'm going to show you that because we have to understand what goes on with Panama. Now that we have colonies in the Pacific, it's going to take 3 months to get to them. And we had originally tried to build a canal. Remember when we were talking about the causes of the Civil War, we talked about the Clayton-Buller Treaty, where the U.S. was trying to go into Nicaragua to make it a slave state, and the British were trying to make a canal there, and we both give up Nicaragua? Well, we realized we need somewhere to build a canal. And the French are actually remember when we colored in Panama, and I told you Panama was controlled by Colombia. The French have gone to the Colombian government and said, we would like to lease the land in Panama because it's a real narrow isthmus. It's about 100 miles from one side to the other. And they want to lease the land to be able to build a canal. And the way that the land is, I do not draw well. Silas has dealt with me for a whole year of drawing. I do not draw well. So just bear with my mountain, okay? So when we go into Panama, it's sea level, and then it rises up. And then it comes down. That's supposed to be a mountain, okay? It just looks like a hump. I'm sorry. Huh? And so our problem for the French engineers is that they can't figure out how they're going to make the water stay. Okay? And so these engineers cannot figure it out. And so they abandoned their project. And so Roosevelt's like, great, I want to go in there. I want to ask the Colombian government to give me this land, or at least let me rent it. He sends in Secretary Hay to go there, and they refuse his offer. So Roosevelt encourages the Panamanian people to revolt against the Colombians and declare their independence. And he brings in the Navy to protect them from the Colombians coming in. So now they're independent, and out of thanks, they will, in the Hay-Pensford Treaty, let the U.S. rent for the next 100 years the Panama Canal. And so now, after we've caused a revolution to be able to build a canal, we're going to go in. It's going to take 10 years to build this canal. We're going to bring in the Army Corps of Engineers. And if you know anything about the Army Corps of Engineers, is they've made every single lake in Texas except one, Lake Tawakoni, because that's a natural lake. So if you go to Lake Waxahachie, have you ever noticed that big wall? That was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. Okay? Every single lake has been built by the Army Corps of Engineers. Army Corps of Engineers come in here and they're like, we could build a canal. And what they decide to do is, just bear with me, I do not draw good. Okay, here's our boat. It is coming in at sea level. Okay? And so they decide to do this, just bear with me. They're going to build locks, like plumbing underneath. And this lock will open, and as this boat approaches, it's at sea level. Do you see how this water is a little higher? When they open this lock, the water will come under, and it will push this boat up to a higher level. And now that it's on the same level as this water, this door will open, and it'll let the boats swim on through. Not swim on through, but you know, float on through. Just keep on swimming. Okay. And they close that door. Now it's over here. Do you see how this water is a little bit higher? So underneath, there's this plumbing. They open it up. The water comes up. The boat rises up. And now this door will open and it will go on through. I'm going to show you a video that will do this a lot better than my drawing. Okay. So here, it's time lapse, so this is sped up. It takes a whole day on this cruise. But as we get into this canal, you're going to see that the water is low right here, and the water up here is high. They're going to open up that plumbing, and it's going to rise. So we went through those 3 locks. That took about 2 hours, but it's time lapse. It looks, they're going through this whole area. Remember the Army Corps of Engineers came in and blew up this mountain to create the canal. And it looks like it's going to hit all these mountains, but it's going really slow. But it's sped up, so just don't freak out that you're going to crash. Does it in the reverse. Okay, it got to the Pacific now. All right, so do y'all see how it works? Okay. So again, the Army Corps of Engineers is going to come in, and a lot of it is because they're going to bring in all this machinery. One of the things that they have to do is they have to build a railroad so they could bring all this machinery in, so they could dig out all of these lakes. Y'all saw it go through, right? And they dig out all these lakes, and that's what's going to allow the water to flow into the canal. Okay? But the other thing that they have to do is they have to bring in the Army Corps of Engineers, but they also have to bring in their doctors, because we're going to have to eliminate what here? Diseases from mosquitoes. So we will rent this canal for 100 years, and eventually under the Bill Clinton administration, this will go back to the Panamanian people, and they control it now. Right? How does Roosevelt look here? Right? There is an issue, and you'll eventually see this on your study guide, that Santo Domingo has issues with what country? Because they're trying to get their claims paid back, right? And they said that they would control their custom house. Well, Roosevelt's going to say no. He's going to be with his big gun, right? With what at the end? But he really doesn't like that it doesn't have his name, so he's going to add to the Monroe Doctrine. It's going to be called the Roosevelt Corollary. He says, in chronic wrongdoing, as may in America as elsewhere, ultimately require the intervention of some civilized nation. Who is that civilized nation? America, of course. And in the Western Hemisphere, the adherents of the United States to the Monroe Doctrine may force the United States, however reluctantly, in flagrant cases of wrongdoing and impotence, to exercise international police power. Are we policing and preventing people from taking down the weak? And so we are going to go around, and Roosevelt is going to be the imperialistic president. One of his philosophies is called speak softly and carry a big stick. Okay? Do y'all see the big stick? It's an Indian proverb that if you have a big stick, other people will listen to you. Okay? And the big stick is not what you think it is. The big stick is actually this. The Navy. Okay? The big stick is the force to make other people listen. If you have big guns and a big navy, are people going to be fearful of you? So that's why you could speak softly. Did I show y'all pictures of China? No. Okay, this was on like the 2006 AP test, and my kids came back to me. They're like, Miss Verdeen, there was this weird dragon, bat, Asian lizard baby, and I was like, what are y'all talking about? Y'all were like hallucinating or something. There it is.
Oh,
okay. Okay, this is a political cartoon, and this bat, Asian, lizard, dragon is supposed to represent a what? China. And I was like, what in the world? I thought they were hallucinating. All right, so let's look at this. Who's this tall guy right here? Uncle Sam. This is an Asian person. What has been happened to them? Okay, who do we think this is right here with little top hats? Businessmen. What do you think they're trying to do to that pole? Untie it. Why would they want to untie that pole? They want the cheap labor. Do Americans want the cheap labor? No. Who specifically doesn't want the cheap labor? Workers. Okay, so because of that, what has happened here? They made a fence. What is this fence in reference to? The Chinese Exclusion Act? Okay, so can they bring in these little Asian workers, or Chinese workers? No. So y'all learned about this last year in world history, that Americans and foreigners have been going into China and carving out places in China. China used to be very powerful, but most people had to bring what to trade with China? Before? Gold. And then eventually what is introduced to circumvent that gold? Silver, and then eventually what? Opium. Y'all did that opium DBQ, remember? Okay, and so now this is what's going to lead to the Boxer Rebellion, that they're upset because, let me just look at this map, have people carved out areas of control. Is the U.S. even on this map? And the U.S. realizes that the foreign nations are doing what to China? Cutting it up, and this is disrespectful. So Secretary of State John Hay is going to go in and negotiate a treaty, because we just seen the Boxer Rebellion, that he wants all nations to have equal access to China, but we need to guarantee that the Chinese have control. And so the open door policy is going to open the door for everybody to trade with China, but who gets to be the bouncer and decide who comes in and who stays out? The Chinese. You see him, he's happy now because he at least has some control. The U.S. is happy with this because were we even trading with China before? No, and now we get to trade with China. So America, we had done this math last time. But what we're going to look at is our new role. Had I shown y'all this? Yeah. Hey, who is the guy? McKinley. On a soapbox. Who are those nations? Hawaii, Cuba, Philippines, Guam, right? And we are making them look like what? Children, so that we could come to their rescue. Had I showed you this one? Who is the guy? Roosevelt. Who are the people over here? Europe. Who are the people over here? Western Hemisphere. And what does he look like? Police officer. Remember that? Do y'all see the big stick? He's saying that we are going to protect who? Who are we protecting? The Europeans or the Latin Americans? From whom? All right, and he's protecting them from the wrongdoing, right? That they're going to be taken over, even though that they, do y'all see what they have in their hands right here? The bills, right? He says they can't take them over even though they owe them money. We have to respect them and come up with plans. Roosevelt will eventually organize a treaty between Russia and Japan. They're about to go to war, and he gets a Nobel Peace Prize for preventing war over the, remember the Sakhalin Islands that looked like a little shark that we did? Okay, so he also funnels more money into our Navy, so we get the Great White Fleet, and they go around the world to show our other nations how powerful our Navy is. Okay, diplomacy is that American businesses had gone overseas and they needed protection. So we're going to send our army to protect them. So wherever our dollar goes, it is protected by the Navy. Now I have to get into issues with Mexico. We're involved in Mexico's mining, railroad, and banking industry. But do you think any of that money stays in Mexico? It comes back to the U.S. And so this is why the Mexican people get really upset. And revolutionaries like Pancho Villa and Zapata get upset with the people in control, Carranzas and Obregón, that they're allowing U.S. businessmen to take this money out. And the revolutionaries rise up. They're saying, no, the Mexican government should control the leading industries, the railroad, the banking, and the mining. And this is going to lead to war. They send in the military troops. And we see that the U.S. sends in people to Veracruz. But in 1914, something starts. And the U.S. gets very scared. If we're in war with Mexico right now, could we get pulled into this global war? And so what happens, because of what is going on, the U.S. would withdraw our troops. And Wilson is going to introduce his policy of moral diplomacy. So I want us to look at this picture, and I want you to tell me, how is Wilson acting? Like a teacher, and he says, we can have no sympathy with those who seek to seize the power of our government. Were there people trying to seek our power? Yeah, those revolutionaries, Villa and Zapata. To advance their personal interests and ambitions. Who are we educating? And one of the things we're going to see when I get into political cartoons in World War I, Mexico will always have a sombrero. Or just party in a hat. Okay. So again, his moral diplomacy is to spread democracy. But are we really spreading democracy? No. Okay, so the irony with that. But looking at this, which nations are we most involved in globally with our interest and investments? Latin America. And this is why we're using the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt Corollary. What are the key things that we're taking from those countries? Why would we need mining? Gold, silver, so we can make what? Paper money. Railroads, right? And then agriculture. Okay, this is just the places we get involved in Latin America. I want us to look at this last image. What does it look like they're doing here? Gambling. So it's a what kind of game? Poker. Okay. Who has the better hand? Or who has the upper hand? Okay, Uncle Sam, he has a lot more chips, right? Do y'all see what the names on these chips are? Countries. What countries? Oh, Latin America. Okay, who do you think all of these people are on this side? The Europeans. And they're on one side because of what doctrine? Monroe. And the U.S. is all by itself because of Monroe. We're the leading one in the Western Hemisphere. Do we have a better hand than they? Because we are forcing them to stay out by that Monroe Doctrine. Okay, you picked up a note set today. This note set was the imperialist timeline. Okay, with McKinley, did we really talk about Hawaii? Did we talk about the Cuban rebels? Did I talk about the Maine? Did I talk about the Teller Amendment? Did I talk about the plaques? Did I talk about that Treaty of Paris? The Filipino insurrection, because they did not want to be what? Controlled. I talked about Boxer and I talked about Open Door. Now with Roosevelt, did I talk about the Roosevelt Corollary? Did I talk about Roosevelt receiving that Nobel Peace Prize? Did I talk about the Gentleman's Agreement with the Filipinos, keeping them out? That was last time. Did I talk about the Great White Fleet? Did I talk about his support for the Panamanian Revolution? And this led us to get the canal. With Taft, dollar diplomacy, and Woodrow Wilson, moral, right? With Mexico, teach them democracy. So I got through these notes with y'all. Okay? So even if you didn't get the PowerPoint, there was notes there.